indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of, let's see, I've got a new, where are my meeting minutes? We have a new way of doing this now, so I'm like, okay. The meeting of the January 25th. Motion? Mrs. Weiss, second. Mrs. Marcus, all in favor? 4-0. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 1st regular business meeting? Motion, Mrs. Weiss, second, Mr. Tomio, all in favor? 4-0. Okay, I think we have a wonderful student that we're commending this evening.
We have an exceptionally wonderful student that we're recognizing this evening, and to assist us in doing that, I would like to call upon our middle school principal, Dr. Sapienza.
Good evening. First, I would like to thank the Board of Education for giving me the opportunity tonight to honor a very special young man from Elwood Middle School. It is such a great privilege for me to be able to stand here tonight in front of you and his family to share more about the kindness and compassion that Nicholas Merlados exudes. As many of you know, the philosophy at Elwood Middle School is to immerse our students and staff in the school community in the ideals of respect, responsibility, and relationships. Every morning, we start the day encouraging our students to be respectful, take responsibility for themselves, and build relationships. Nicholas came to see me in the early months of December to share with me his concern about one of his fellow classmates who was out of school due to a serious medical condition. He beautifully articulated how hard he felt it must be for her to be out of school for so long, away from her friends and her teachers. He said to me, "Dr. Sapienza, I want to make sure she knows her friends at school have not forgotten about her." From that conversation, Nicholas organized a fundraiser for the entire 6th grade to donate to purchasing a gift for the holiday season for his classmate. Nicholas enlisted the help of a few friends to set up a table during the lunch periods to raise the money for his friend. Over the course of a week, Nicholas had raised enough money, and along with the help of his mother, he purchased and delivered a holiday present to remind his fellow classmate that she was cared for and missed. Nicholas, we are so proud of the kindness and compassion that you demonstrated, but more importantly, for turning your heartfelt concerns for your classmate into action. You served as a true friend and a role model to your peers. You and your family should be very proud. I know that all of us at Elwood Middle School are.
Look at me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. Keep the sling.
Parents,
No,
we'll stay this way.
No.
You want to take a picture? Okay. But you're hiding behind.
1, 2, 3.
The photo bomb, good?
Okay, we can send the pictures there.
Nicholas, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you probably have a lot of homework and reading to catch up on. So if you would like to depart now, you're welcome. And take your family with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have recognition of donations. Oh, you have to forgive us because we're using a new software to do our board meeting, and this is kind of the first go-round, so. Do you see donations anywhere on here?
Do you have donations?
I just have
There are none to accept this evening.
Oh, we have none.
No.
Should we have 10 each?
Yeah.
So none, okay?
Okay. And we'll skip to the lovely President Emma Costa for the student update.
I'm preempting the student update. It is wonderful that we just were able to recognize one of our 6th grade students. It is great when students in Elwood go above and beyond, and not always are those efforts recognized, and not always do we get to award the wonderful things that are happening, but sometimes we do. Mrs. Brzezinski nominated one of our high school seniors for the Suffolk County High School Principals Association Scholarship. They've been doing this for 10 years, and the 10th annual luncheon will be on April the 25th. It's sponsored by Allstate, and it's heavy competition because, believe me, every high school principal has multiple members of their graduating class that they would love to honor for the wonderful things that are taking place. I had an opportunity to review Mrs. Brzezinski's passionate application for a member of the senior class at John Glenn, and I am happy to report that that senior was selected for the scholarship award for this year, and it just happens to be Emma Costa.
That's exciting.
Shocking.
She got in.
Hello. Hello.
We're down.
Hello.
There we go.
Hello. It is good to see you all this evening. I apologize for my absence at last month's meeting, but I'm very happy to be back here reporting on all the exciting happenings in Elwood tonight. So many amazing things have been going on from Harley to the high school in this chilly month of February. Harley continues to recognize admirable character and exemplary behavior with their January Knights of the Month. Adahan Anke, Megan Fifield, and Marcus Kang. We commend you each for serving as positive role models to your classmates. Harley also celebrated the 100th day of school by encouraging students to dress like they were 100 years old. Special Persons Day took place this past Tuesday night and was very well attended thanks to the hard work and beautiful job done by the PTA committee. Our primary building is currently in the process of preparing a video for International Night titled 72 Countries, One School. This exciting project is a continuation of the Flag Project, which worked towards helping students understand and celebrate their different cultures. Friday, February 9th, was host to the joint Harley-Boyd talent show. In an incredible showcase of ability and skill, students from kindergarten through 5th grade performed talents of their choice to an excited audience. The middle school held their famous Blue and White Night on February 8th, providing a great opportunity for the 8th graders to come out and rally around each other in a good-natured competition and have some fun. John Glenn has been a hotspot for so many fantastic things in the last few weeks. Beginning the month with the Elwood Stock Concert, high school faculty and students put their musical talent on display. The senior class held their fashion show on February 7th, with gentlemen modeling tuxedos and ladies in a wide range of fashions, all the unique style made for an entertaining night. On Tuesday of this past week, our orchestra performed in the highly anticipated Exchange Concert. The orchestra enjoyed sharing their skills with students from other schools. The Unity with Diversity Club put on a fantastic showcase in honor of Black History Month this past Monday the 12th. The evening consisted of poetry, dancing, singing, food, trivia, the presentation of important and thought-provoking messages, and performances from both the kickline and a cappella. The dedicated students in this club worked incredibly hard to create a night of thoughtful reflection and entertainment. We are excited to announce that freshman buddy nominees are coming in from faculty members.
Students that embody leadership and mentoring characteristics, are reliable and always willing to help, have the privilege of being chosen to participate as a leader in this prestigious group. With the idea of excellent character in mind, it is my pleasure to report this month's Noble Knight has gone to Miss Regan. Selected by January's Noble Knight at the high school, Mr. Chesnoff, Miss Regan acts as Vice President of the Union and was selected for outstanding teaching as well as the excellent way she represents the educator's voice within the Union. We are very much looking forward to our musical production of The Little Mermaid on March 2nd and 3rd. I encourage everyone to come out and support the incredible talent of our arts department on full display through this production. On March 13th, Dr. Dewey will be presenting during school to all grades and will then have a parent presentation that evening. The presentation will cover the effects of e-cigarettes, vaping, and drug abuse in teens. Dr. Dewey is a neuroscientist from the Feinstein Institute for Medical Research and is a member of the Suffolk County Board of Health. All are encouraged to attend, and 2 hours of community service will be given to students who come to the evening presentation and bring a parent. As always, we have some outstanding students to recognize. Francisco Nam has been accepted to CIA, Culinary Institute of America. Congratulations, Francisco, on this tremendous accomplishment, and thanks to Ms. Gucci for her great work. Jonglin scientists, led by Ms. Hume at the Science Olympiad, took 6th place among the 48 teams at the Quiz Bowl. Congrats to them on this impressive show of scientific knowledge. As the winter sports season winds to a close, we have many exciting details to share regarding our JGHS teams. The boys wrestling team finished 3rd in Suffolk County and 10th in New York State with a record of 22-3. The team had 12 all-league wrestlers and were led by undefeated league champions Nick Blanton and Joe Francis. The boys basketball team finished with a league record of 10-6 and made it to the playoffs after what I understand to be one of the closest and most exciting games of the season just last night. The girls basketball team is 10-5 and also continuing on to playoffs. The winter track team has been competing hard with individual times that serve to make the community proud. Special recognition for a few extraordinary athletes, such as Joe Francis, Christian Holzer, and Nick Blanton for being League 6 wrestling champions. Congratulations also go out to Alyssa Adamides for 1,000 points in her basketball career as a junior, Nathaniel Larkins on being named an All-State football player, and Russell Rohan III for breaking the 2008 school record for the triple jump. Lastly, congratulations to Alice Chiodo, who is the county leader in the high jump, clearing 5 feet 5.5 inches. We wish Alice luck as she goes on to compete at States on March 3rd. I would like to wish everyone a fantastic break. I hope you are all able to rest, relax, enjoy time with friends and family, and have a safe week. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Have an excellent night.
That's how I end all my letters, Emma. Okay.
Thank you as always, Emma. And I'll hand it over to Dr. Bosser.
Okay. Thank you, Emma, for the very thorough report. We always enjoy hearing about the positive things that take place in our schools. Thank you so much. I had to change my topic for reporting tonight due to the very tragic events that took place yesterday. Last night's call, I was careful to mention that I was not reading from a script, but tonight I do have some prepared remarks. Our heartfelt condolences go out to the families of the victims of the Parkland school shooting. Senseless, horrific acts like this cannot be allowed to become commonplace in our society. It is time we change the dialogue from new and creative ways to hide our students to more productive conversations about how to prevent such violence from occurring in the first place. In Elwood, we do everything possible to ensure the safety, health, and welfare of our students, faculty, and staff. This includes performing drills to prepare for weather conditions, fire, as well as senseless acts of violence. All administrators, faculty, staff, and security personnel remain vigilant in securing our facilities at all times. Our school safety plans are consistently reviewed, updated, and shared with law enforcement officers. All schools are assigned full-time security guards that are former trained law enforcement officers. We drill lockdown and lockout procedures with the assistance of the Suffolk County Police Department, using our school resource officer as the liaison. Many of our safety protocols and documents are purposely kept confidential. We do not want to share this information with those who may intend to do us harm. As you know from visiting our facilities, we maintain a constant state of lockout. All doors are secured, and visitors must be buzzed in and produce identification. We have video cameras to survey extensive areas of our school buildings, and we'll be enhancing this coverage using SmartVard funding. In addition, through SmartVard funding, we've been able to enhance our internal notification abilities as well. Each building conducts a minimum of 4 lockdown drills per year to prepare students and faculty in the event of an internal threat. We do these in conjunction with Suffolk County Police Department. The most recent drill took place yesterday morning at John Glenn High School. Drills of this type have become part of school culture, just as fire drills have always been. Each building drill is evaluated and enhanced as police intelligence and recommendations grow and change. We will continue to collaborate with local, state, and federal law enforcement officers to do everything possible to ensure the safety of our students and staff. We appreciate the continued support of parents and community in complying with safety requirements we put forward. If any member of the public has specific questions or concerns, they may contact me at any time, as many parents did today. If any parent needs assistance in speaking to their child about this tragic event, they're encouraged to contact their child's teacher, a member of the support staff, such as our guidance counselors, social workers, and building psychologists. Following the winter break, I've been invited to meet with Suffolk County Executive Steve Ballone and the Suffolk County Police Department Chief Stu Cameron to continue the conversation regarding maximizing school safety. We are losing our way if we believe the only next step is to hide better. I look forward to working together to change that dialogue. Tomorrow, I'll be putting out a short letter to parents and this attachment to our website. It's from the National Association of School Psychologists, and it's guidance for talking to children about violence for both parents and teachers. So this is something we'll send out tomorrow, and something I hope the community finds useful during a very difficult time. Does the board have any questions about security protocols or enhancements that I can speak to? Sure.
I know that with some of the colleges, they have internal alert programs for their students. I guess they put them on we, the confidentiality. Do we do that to our students? Like I know, I guess yesterday, the kids thought there was a fire drill, and that even though they had fire drill earlier, that there was confusion, and that really, that lack of communication was probably what caused more deaths than necessary. Well,
We don't have a communication system that would contact students via cell phone. But one of the enhancements that we're adding through the smartphone financing will make it easier for lockdowns to be both called for and noticed. We're adding different types of alarm systems, pulse switches, notifications that go on computer desktops. And I think that when we are in a lockdown emergency, it will be abundantly clear to everyone inside and outside of the building that that's our status.
okay. Thank you.
We also had a lot of conversations today about common sense. You know, each time there's an event like what took place in Florida yesterday, we learn more and more from it. And one of the things we have drilled our faculty and staff is ignore all alarms, ignore all notifications given out during a lockdown. The only time they are directed to leave a lockdown secured area is when they are asked to do so by the police department. Not by the building principal, not by a member of the support staff, a uniformed officer. In a real event, that's the only acceptable thing. We also have to talk about common sense. One of the young ladies I saw interviewed outside the high school in Parkland was outside and heard that a lockdown had been called for, so she ran inside to shelter herself. So part of what our training with the police department tells us is don't forget to rely upon common sense. If you're outside and there's an event in the building, keep on track. Run as fast and as far as you can. Things like that. If there is an easy egress near where you are in an emergency, get out and run. We can't forget our common sense versus our training. So part of our training is to ignore what you've been told if there is a circumstance that allows you to do that. And I think that's the hardest thing, is to get people to think logically during such a traumatic time. Any other questions? Sure.
It's not a question, but it's a comment. Are you allowed to share the varied techniques that we do for different drills?
I would not.
Okay.
And that we actually had to scrub our website a bit, because if there are folks who are intending to do us harm, we were giving more information than we wanted them to have. So I would answer your question, and I'm happy that the faculty and staff and administration is very fluent in the plan. But I'm also very happy it's not posted or shared with the community at large. Because if someone wants to do harm in Elwood School District, we don't want to spoon feed it to them.
Then without saying anything, I just want to offer encouragement that I know, being on the safety committee, that we're doing things in a way that's very smart. And, I mean, we can't share it, I guess, but, and it's very smart. You should be encouraged that it's not just stale, it's fresh, it's good.
State of the art.
I would say we update our methodologies constantly. When new advisories come down, whether it be from the Suffolk County Police Department or the Department of Homeland Security, we adapt our behavior to what's being recommended to us as best practice, and that's constantly changing. Any other questions, Shelley?
No, it's just a comment that because I've been, watching the news all day, and really, it's a matter of, just when you see something, to say something. And I think that if a parent, and I have I had 3 post-high schoolers and one still in high school, that really is just having that communication, not to just blow it off. And, I think there was a lot of opportunity to really get involved. And these kids nowadays, and, maybe as a society in whole, we tend to kind of brush things off, but this is probably an awakening call, so maybe having that conversation. Because, as I'm driving into the school campus today, there's no physical way that we can secure this campus 100%. Maybe you have an idea that I don't have, but, we have an outdoor playground, we have an outdoor parking lot. You can put, those metal detectors at the doors, but you just, I think it's just the culture that needs to be changed. It's very sad.
We need to change the dialogue. I agree. We need to stop talking about best ways to respond and talk about best ways to prevent.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, I was asked by a member of the Board of Education to provide an update to some advocacy work that had been done with the Board of Education. If you recall a letter that we read publicly and sent to our local officials, the State Education Department, etc., about multiple pathways for graduation, and some changes have occurred. So I asked Mrs. Wilkinson to give us a brief overview tonight, and then she has some work prepared. Mrs. Wilkinson.
And so I just wanted to say that those advocacy efforts are so important because, believe it or not, the state is actually listening. And we know they're listening because in December, they adopted an emergency regulation that allows the superintendent the authority to award a local diploma to a student with a disability that is currently classified, that has not been able to pass the required Regents exams that are needed to earn a local diploma. It's titled Superintendent Determination of Graduation with a Local Diploma. I have a packet prepared for you. There is a set criteria that you must meet in order to be eligible for this. The reading is somewhat dense, but I've put in some resources and charts that you can refer to. I think for us, as you as a board and the educators who are in the schools, I think we should be heartened to know that this is in place. It's an emergency regulation. It'll end at the end of the school year, but the state is actually discussing adopting a local diploma with no Regents requirements attached at all. So if you know somebody who has a child with a disability, and you are aware of the fact that sometimes they're taking the same Regents exam multiple times, June, August, and then in January, and yet other Regents exams continue to accumulate. There are multiple ways to demonstrate what you know, and what would happen is if the state does adopt a local diploma that is not attached to a Regents exam, but does have a set criteria where students have to demonstrate proficiency in those content areas, I think it would allow those students an opportunity to pursue other types of programs. And so I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
had the opportunity to preview Mrs. Wilkinson's report. That will be part of your Friday update tomorrow. It's very clear, it's very succinct, but should you have any questions after reviewing the materials, please just refer to them.
And I think that was important in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, that some employment opportunities weren't available to these students because they didn't have a real diploma. What did they have that, what was it called? Mm-hmm.
I think what happened is they were giving out what was called an IEP diploma, and the fact that it had the word diploma at the end, parents assumed that it held the same weight as a local diploma or a Regents diploma. And so the state felt as though they needed to be more transparent because parents were stating that they really had no idea that this would, prevent their child from being able to serve in the military or attend a vocational program or a community college. And what happened was they decided to make two distinct credentials. One is called the SAC, and it's the Skills Academic Achievement Credential, and that goes to students who are what we refer to as our life skills students.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be earning a diploma, but they can work, they can be in supported employment, there are some opportunities for them. But we have another group of students who do go to tech programs and can pass some Regents exams and maybe are not reading on grade level but have intellect in some other areas, and they were getting that same IEP diploma. What's happening now is they're getting a technical credential. And so there's a lot of talk about, expanding those pathways like Dr. Bossert, was advocating for. And you can see that the state is really taking a look at that because, I have this chart, there's all these multiple pathways, not just for special ed students, but for gen ed students too. So it's an exciting time. I really think it's an exciting time to be in education. Thank you.
If you recall, when we sent our advocacy letter to the Commissioner of Education signed by the Legislative Committee, we received an immediate response working on it. She was sincere. They were definitely working on it. And shortly thereafter, we received guidance on what the changes could be.
I should note that they're still taking comments till the end of February. If you wanted to weigh in on, do you think that these students should be able to earn a diploma without a Regents exam? So the community is free to also weigh in on that.
Needless to say, I've weighed on multiple occasions in multiple venues.
Right.
Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Wilkinson.
So, as you all know, the board also participates in board subcommittees that meet various times throughout the year. We changed our protocol a little bit this year in that you don't actually have to be a member of a committee to attend the meeting and participate. Any community member can look online, look at the agenda, and decide if that's a topic that's really important to them, and participate in the meeting. And I think it's been a great change. And so we thought in the middle of the year we'd give each other and the community updates on what those subcommittees have been working on. So it's very brief. We'll just go over quickly what each board subcommittee is working on, and if it inspires you to come to one of the meetings, they're all posted on the website under the Board of Education tab, under the Committees tab. So you can look at the meeting dates and the agendas for those. They're all posted prior to the meeting. So the first one is CFBAC, and we're actually having our first meeting tonight with our budget presentation. So there's not much to update on the community then. But if you look at the agendas, they'll follow closely with all our Board of Education budget presentations. So the second is facilities, and who's taking facilities? Mr. Tanya, go for it.
Take it away.
You got it.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I have the honor of chairing the Facilities Committee with Mrs. Weiss, under the leadership of Ms. Hoffman and Mr. McDonald, and we have been very busy, as you can imagine, with the bond going through, and we thank the community for their support with that. The next stage is the real work is starting to begin, so we are knee-deep in the process. And just to go over a couple of things that are coming down the pipe, the team has just currently reviewed who we're going to be suggesting to the board this evening for recommendation as our construction managers. And it's going to be recommended that we appoint Park East Construction for the capital bond project, which you'll see later on this evening. And our architect, PBS, has submitted to State Education Department for the roofing and the gym floor projects to begin hopefully in July of 2018. It has been decided by the committee to move forward with an outsourced review of this project with hopes that the approval will come back in a more timely manner. And the cost of review is a little north of $25,000, and the review is an aidable expense through our building aid, and hopefully by getting that project done faster will save future costs of what it would possibly cost us if we weren't to get the project done for a year or two. So hopefully we get the approval from the State Education Department and we're able to fund the roofs and get everything sooner than later to save money in the line item for the budget and for the bond. So that's pretty much where we're at with the Facilities Committee, and I'm going to segue right over into the Legislative Committee. Myself and Mrs. Mamalito, who's unable to be here this evening, have, in conjunction with the rest of the board, worked on multiple legislative initiatives this year, and we thank Dr. Bossert, who has led the way between his connections with the Superintendent's Association and his connections with all of the superintendents on the island. We have been able to definitely achieve a lot this year. We've been focused on equitable funding for all New York State public schools, the creation of the teacher retirement system reserves, so hopefully we'll be able to allocate future reserves for the teachers' retirement where we could, protect our assets as far as where we're going to be as the money's coming for the teachers. It's one of the largest components of the budget, and if we have extra money or we have the affordability to put money towards that, we could save and budget appropriately, where we haven't been able to do as much as we wanted to in years past. So hopefully we can advocate hard for that. I'm going to leave the next one to the end. We've been developing a meaningful teacher evaluation system, which has definitely been a hot topic for quite some time, so we're still working on that. And fully funding future mandates and trying to avoid from the unfunded mandates, which is definitely a hard task to achieve, but something we will continue to advocate for. And lastly, the supporting of the mental health services for the students, especially after what happened yesterday. I think it's in the forefront of everyone's mind. What are we going to be doing as a society to recognize what's going on in our youth and the mental services that are needed to hopefully capture these instances prior from happening and being able to provide the guidance and the help that's needed. And although the schools aren't the immediate venue to provide the mental services, your children are here, and it's our job, it's the faculty's job to listen to them, help them, guide them. It's also the parents' job at home. So in conjunction, if we could bring something to the table on both sides with the parents and the school district working hand in hand to offer these services and help the students, it's definitely going to be advantageous. And as far as a board, we've all went to multiple venues this year so far, and we have a couple more to go to. We have gone to the Western Suffolk BOCES Legislative Breakfast. It was held in January 19th, excuse me. The Superintendent Advocacy Workshop that was held on a beautiful Saturday, the following day right after the Legislative Breakfast on Friday. So it was a busy weekend. And we had the Longwood Legislative Breakfast, which is a huge event that's held all the way out in Longwood on another Saturday that the entire board was invited to, and we got to witness Emma Costa. Unfortunately, she left, but she had a question that she was able to present to the dais of our elected officials. So we appreciate her coming and taking the time out of her day and driving out there and representing Elwood as proudly as she always does. And thank you to her mom as well. Thank you, Ms. Costa. And future meetings coming up, we do have Dr. Bossert going up to Albany with the Go ahead, superintendent, go ahead, SCSSA. We'll leave it at the acronym. And he'll be there on March 5th and 6th to meet with our local elected officials. So hopefully he will continue to work his magic, and we appreciate all that he does with those efforts. And then we have another meeting on Saturday, March 10th, which will be hosted by the South Huntington School District. And there we're going to be sitting down with our surrounding school districts, Harbor Fields, Huntington, South Huntington, ourselves, Comac, possibly, maybe, you know, invited. So we're going to entertain the local officials there as well, and hopefully we'll be able to have some great dialogue.
Will that be open to the public? That'll be open to the public?
Invitation, I was going to say, I think it's invitation only. You'll get an invitation. So yeah, it's been busy on the two subcommittees, and I know the rest of the board has been equally as busy, if not more, so I will pass the mic to.
So I'll do curriculum day?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
So the curriculum committee has also been busy. One of the main things that we worked on last year with Mrs. Hull, myself, Mrs. Weiss, and the committee was a district-wide homework philosophy. And I believe Mrs. Hull has some copies that she'll pass out. But for those of you riveted to your computer at home, if you'd like to look at the homework philosophy, it is posted on the website. In grades K through 5, the parents got copies at parent-teacher conferences. K through 12, next year they'll get a copy at Meet the Teacher Night. So it kind of gives you an idea of what our philosophy is, what are the roles of the students, the teachers, and the parents at each level of education that we have here in Elwood. And it gives a guideline for all of us that are working together to make our students successful. So that was kind of a year and a change project, which is, I think, a great one. The second big project that we're working on is right now we are looking at some kind of guide to study skills at the different grade levels. So how can you help your students in an age-appropriate manner study? Because that was brought up in a number of the curriculum conversations that Mrs. Hull holds, that the parents feel the students need, and they also want a guide on how to help students be successful with studying. So, of course, how a kindergartner has to study and how a high schooler has to study are vastly different. So we're working on kind of guides for each school in an age-appropriate manner on how parents can help and how students should be studying. I believe that we've decided that the guides will really be geared toward the student. So, for example, Mrs. Milan made up one for kindergarten, a draft already, and it's just little Post-its with stick figures, like eat a good dinner, and there's, little family at the table, and it was really cute. But it's really a guide for students on what they should be doing at different age levels to help them study. So that's our big project for this year. Let's see. There's two kinds of things that we're involved in. One is the curriculum committee itself, but one are curriculum conversations that Mrs. Hull holds, and that's really for anybody in the district who has a question regarding curriculum. Then those concerns get kind of funneled into the curriculum committee, and we decide if there's a project that we are willing to undertake. Many of those things Mrs. Hull just sends the appropriate resource, and, the question gets answered. But sometimes it's a big thing that we say, wow, we really need to sink our teeth into this. So that's what we've been doing. I think the next curriculum conversation is Thursday, April 26th. The next curriculum committee meeting is March 14th and then May 29th. And that's about it. We're also starting to look at how we embed research with our students at a young age all the way up through high school, including our capstone program. So, in an age-appropriate manner, how do we inspire kids to start questioning and coming up with ideas of their own? So we're talking about that at different age levels, and we talked about how Teachers College plays a role in that in the younger grades, and how capstone program is is in the older grades and where we kind of start our science research, and all those things are topics that we're working on. So that's about it. Let's see, who's next? Health and nutrition.
Health and nutrition. So I sit on health and nutrition with Mrs. Freed, and Dave Shanahan is the administrator on it. And we started with, as with every committee, we kind of open up our first meeting and how do we want to go forward with the year? You know, with curriculum, we looked at basically what do our kids need? What are the colleges looking for when they leave us? What are the skills that they felt that they needed to succeed? And that's how we come up with, you know, the study skills, the topic for this year. With health and nutrition, it's comprised of 17 stakeholders currently, and there's parents, there's the nurses from all the schools. Julia has a background in nursing, I have a non-health background. So it's really a wealth of information. Parents of allergy kids, parents of non-allergy kids. And what we decided to look at was looking at our allergy and food policy and focusing on the strengths and the weaknesses of it and revisiting it and coming up with recommendations to make it as strong as possible, as safe as possible for our students. And so we're, you know, open to all dialogue with that. You know, we've had parents who have young kids with anaphylactic, we've had parents who have no food allergies, but there's a common ground to how do we provide a safe environment for our kids, and especially when they get into the older grades where there is no allergy table, and you know, how do they make that succession going forward, what kind of things. So that's what we're working on, and we have our next meeting. I forgot to mention, we're currently working on, we're doing a Google document, so which we'll be able to edit a little bit based on input that we all have from our meetings. And the next meeting is going to be April 17th. So, and again, you know, everybody's welcome to come, you know, especially if you have a concern that maybe you want addressed. So that you can, you know, be aware of that. And that's it. And I guess on the next one.
Technology, you doing that too?
I'm doing that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so technology, it's myself and Mrs. Marcus that co-chair it with Jean Trujillo. And, you know, I have to say one thing. I sit on 4 committees, and the administrators on these committees are beyond, you know, it's like being in college with the best professors. They are just so enlightening, their depth of knowledge. And Jean brought to us something at the beginning of the year, and he said, I think you're going to be excited by this. And I'm like, okay. And I'm a tech geek.
Can you interrupt for 1 second? Can you interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
Are you referring to Jean Tranquino, the Scope Bright Light Award winner?
I certainly am. I forgot to.
Is that the Jean Tranquino?
We have to bow to him. He brought to us, and again, it stems from a concern and an issue that was with multiple passwords, and I'm sure any administrator and any teacher will tell you that when they're in the class and with the use of technology, that as they're going through, and especially with the younger kids, you know, I struggle with this myself. I use one password for everything, which is probably not the best thing. But, you know, it takes, right on camera. But it really does take away, it takes time. I think it was something, Jean, correct me, like 10 or 11 minutes of instructional time to change over. I forget what the actual number was, but it was
So
significant.
it's a lot of clicks to find the resources, and then when you find them again, what's that password? Well, what's that username?
Right.
If you get that, you still need to think about it.
And I'm just going to relay a parent situation to this real quick. In one of our meetings, the 5th graders were doing this 7 Wonders of the World project, okay? But they weren't the real wonders of the world, they're something else. But anyhow, so everybody's going nuts trying to find something. And Krista Albright in the technology group said, hey, you know, you can access the encyclopedia. And so she tells me this, maybe it's a Tuesday or Wednesday. Of course, when we do the project, but over the weekend. And she gives me all the information. I couldn't remember the password. And I happen to have a little in, because I can email her and text her, and she's gonna, but I just thought, how frustrating. Like, so this, and I'm gonna let Jean show you, I'm gonna let you talk about it now, is the way to solve that, and it's called ClassLink. And we are so excited about this.
So we prepared 2 short clips, and they are short, what it's like to find resources and successfully use them without this new tool, and that's what this will illustrate quite nicely, I hope. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mrs. Kelly.
So this first clip, Jean, is not using plastic.
This is the non-ClassLink example that I'm attempting to show you right now.
So here the student would open up their Chromebook, power it on, they would log in with their username and password, and the default homepage presented to them is the Elwood School District website. Well, the site was built for the purpose of presenting our school district to the public and our presence on the internet, not necessarily as a delivery platform for instructional resources to our students. They're in there, but they're not well organized, and some of them are quite hard to find. So as a student needing to complete an assignment, here's a scenario that is very common.
My teachers assigned us a homework assignment, and I know that I have to get to my math textbook. So I'm going to go to schools, middle school. And now there's a few places I could go to look for this textbook. I could go to classroom websites, Library and Media Center maybe might have it, and parents and students may have it. I know there's links on all of these pages, but I seem to remember I could go to classroom websites. And of course I'll look for my teacher's name, Miss Giordano, and I'm looking for a link to the website. I'm not seeing it easily here. I'm going to try resources. And yes, here it is, math textbook. And now I have to enter my username, which I remember is elw.first3first6. So first 3, first 6. Oh, no, one too many. Okay. And now I'm going to put in my password. Okay, I'm going to say login. Username and password don't match. Oh, I must have forgotten my password. So I'm going to click on forgot your password. Oh, okay. Okay, what's your favorite movie? I got that one, Star Wars. And I want to put a space there. Yeah, and reset password. Wait. Security question was answered incorrectly. But wait, Star Wars is my favorite movie.
And therein lies the problem of using the district website to find the resources, and even when you find them, as we said previously, you've got to remember that username and password each time you go into these resources. So now I turn on my Chromebook, I log in. And I'm brought to the start page, which tells me to simply start here. Sign in with Google. One click, I will do that. And welcome to your programs. These are the instructional applications which are now presented to me in an organized portal.
So now I remember all the steps it took me to log in the old way. And I have used this portal once before to log into McGraw-Hill Connected, so now all I need to do is just one click, and I'm in. If I have to look for some other resources, I can go back to the dashboard.
Is this ready?
Here's more Google Apps. So I can not only view content, but create content using these apps. And we also have an EMS library folder with a whole collection of resources that used to take me many, many clicks to get to. And I'd have to search for the usernames and passwords. And now simply a click. And I'm in.
The portal increases the value of our Chromebooks in that they are now the on-ramp to our instructional resources rather than the on-ramp to the internet at large.
So I think what we're really excited about with this is that there's a lot of resources that are available and yet they're underutilized. So this will give us the ability to actually look at those programs and say, or those applications and say, okay, which ones are we really utilizing and which ones aren't? And there's a data trackability with it, which is
Yeah, there are
available as
reports
feature.
and metrics on
And
which ones are
metrics
clicked, how frequently, so we can look at, if we put money into these, we feel they're useful. Perhaps there are other websites that are
Yeah.
being used in case, in their replacement. The other thing with this is we can easily add icons to these portals and have them for grade 6, 7, 8, or the entire building. And the faculty as well has a portal with all their instructional resources available for them to make assignments and have your students go to. So it's a complete circle solution. It's not just a one-sided instructional student piece. There is a really useful faculty piece to this as well.
And so can you just explain, you've rolled out the prototype to the middle school currently?
So this was done as a pilot, half-year pilot for the middle school students because we wanted to get the best bang for the buck and the best test bed to look at the data after. And that's a 24/7 use of Chromebooks for instructional use. So this is available to them not only on their Chromebook from any device. We have a link now on the middle school homepage for ClassLink. They can get to that from any device, anytime, any place. They do not need a Chromebook to have that exact same experience you just saw.
Wow. So it's a platform.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Becky?
I'm wondering if you could organize my home computer with my Apple ID and
It's horrible.
Just a tab.
We need ClassLink home.
So, we're trying to gain back some of that instructional time where the class has to log in and then all the hands go up.
Right.
Then what do?
What is
You
it?
keep going, you let half of them not, or you stop and try to resolve, and you're
Right.
just taking away time.
But
And at home, it's even worse because there's no one to help you.
Yeah, and we had a training at the last meeting, and the middle school librarian came up, I believe it was, and she was showing us resources that are available that really nobody uses because they're so embedded in a teacher's website or whatever, and not that they're not wonderful, just like the encyclopedia one for the 5th grade project. So having it readily there, looking at it when you pop up on the screen to say, hey, wow, let me look at this, and let me Google this one and see what that one has in it. So it's really, I think, going to be a very useful feature.
Just a quick thank you to Mrs. Albrecht, who's watching from home. Hello, Krista.
Yes, thank
And,
you.
Mrs. Hanley for a lot of the back-end work. This looks so seamless and easy because of the work done to make it seamless and easy.
They are a great
Thanks
team.
to them, great people, and Mrs. Marcus and Mrs. Weiss for your participation, and also Mrs. Held, our Boyd faculty member who's been at every meeting for years. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
I just want to add on that briefly, that I think it's great that all of the tech staff took something that we're already giving students, we're already giving Chromebooks. And I feel like this is part of our goals to continue to increase and better our technology initiatives here. So this is initiative 1, let's say, and Gene and his team, including Martha and Krista, now have ClassLink to really make this 1,000 times a better gift to the students to use. I mean, it just increases the value of their experience with the Chromebooks. So hopefully it won't be so, I don't know, there's often some complaints about dragging a Chromebook here and there and everywhere. This really makes it a very useful tool, so that's very exciting. So thank you.
I think you've got safety.
Yes, I have safety. I kind of think that everything that I would say was already said by Dr. Bossart, appropriately, responding to Florida. So I don't want to rehash everything that we do here and are continuing to do. Obviously, the safety of the students is of utmost concern to everybody on the board and everybody on administration and faculty, and I'm sure parents and community members. So it's not a committee to take lightly. If you do want to participate, it's part of the open meeting, so anybody can come and share their ideas and ask questions. We do work closely with the 2nd Precinct. And like I said, I think we're doing some innovative things that maybe I shouldn't be sharing, but just know that I feel good about it, and I feel like I'm pretty type A about this kind of thing, so that should make you feel good. And I wanted to blend my technology committee with my safety committee, since we were talking about mental health, and encourage everyone to look into Dr. Bossart's book club style initiative that we're going to do with the book called iGen, talking about having a generation of electronic users, users, and included in that book, which I have not read, but I know it discusses some mental health concerns. So that may be something good in this culture. When we're talking about mental health and students, for all parents to participate in. I'm looking forward to it, so continue to see I think you may have put that on the website too.
Can you just remind me
Okay.
of that?
No.
It's like on the website.
It's April 17th. It's under latest news on the website. It's the first thing on the latest news. April 17th.
Residents' remarks first. I am not used to this yet. That's okay. First, residents' remarks. The board encourages all residents to attend its meetings, and this section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves and any organization they represent at the meeting. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and may not exceed 3 minutes. Public discussion of matters relating to staff, students, or others at which their reputations, privacy, or right to due process could be in some way violated is prohibited. Any residents' remarks? Seeing none, we'll go to the board workshop. Number 2. This is Lachlan. Budget workshop, number 2.
Did you want me to say Mrs. Locken, would you like to take a second? So, as the board is aware,
Sorry.
5 minutes or less.
tonight will take us through the administrative capital component. One of the things that is of particular interest has to do with our allowable tax levy. This budget has been built using our worst case scenario of a 2% cap. So as we take you through conversations this evening and moving forward to next month, Carrie is going to give a very careful overview tonight of what our allowable cap is versus the budget that we've constructed. So the framework that I would love for the board to view the presentation with is that flexibility. I think it's important to understand what we are allowed to propose versus what we may propose. And Carrie will hopefully make it very clear what each percentage indicates from 2% to our allowable cap. But the board should understand within the proposal, we used worst case scenario as a 2% budget. So we will talk about opportunities for enhancing our programs, enhancing our presentation, if the board should afford the community the opportunity to demonstrate flexibility above 2%. I think that's what we discussed talking about prior to.
I'm going to try standing over here. Just the directional of the slides behind me and stuff is not working lately, so let's see if this works. So we're going to go over the administrative capital component. Last meeting, we kind of did a broad overview of how the budget process works all together. So just to review again, year 20, for the current year that we're in, we've done another update as of the end of January for this past month. And we are seeing a surplus of revenue over expenditures, and that is highly due to the back building aid that we received. Expense spending has been stopped, all buildings district-wide as of January 31st. So everyone at this point has purchased everything they need for the remainder of the school year. There are some things that may come up, and we are aware of that, so we'll continue to keep that in mind as we move forward. We'll fully fund the undesignated reserve, which is a 4% maximum allowed, and we intend to fund the FLR and ERS reserve, that's the employee benefit accrued liability, and the employee retirement system reserves, with any additional savings we may see above and beyond the undesignated reserve amount. So for 2018-19, we have some goals that we're working within. We're looking to maintain our programs K-12, which is Teachers College, the One-to-One Chromebook Initiative, AIS and enrichment supports in grades K through 12. And we're also looking to maintain fiscal health of the district. This year we received no designation from the controller for fiscal stress, which we have been receiving various designations the past 3 years. So we're proud of that, and we're looking to maintain that. We're continuing to fund reserves, and we're looking to create a capital reserve. Last meeting, we spoke of a capital versus repair reserve for the research that we've been doing and training that we've been receiving from various workshops that I've been to. We are now at a point where we're looking to recommend a capital reserve over a repair reserve to the board. So at this point in time, these are estimated numbers as of February 8th, 2018, when we prepared the presentation. Keeping in mind this is an ever-growing process, we will not adopt a budget until April. And we still have some major pieces of it that we're working forward. So program cost of the budget, 75% of the budget. Our capital component's about 13%, and the administrative component is just over 11% of our budget in total. The administrative component is a bunch of costs that are in there. It's not just administrative salaries, there's support staff, as we discussed last meeting. We have legal fees, auditor's fees, all the staff within the business office, the supplies and contracts that we do, the superintendent's office, the curriculum department, human resources. We do contract out for a lot of services. We have a lot of BOCES contracts that affect all of those departments. We have the district-wide insurance policy. This is not the benefits for the employees. This is the policy to insure the district buildings. And we have the main office of each building, staffing and supplies, the principal's offices basically within the administrative component. So the budget reflects the salaries and benefits for retiring personnel that we're aware of at this point in time. The employee retirement rate has decreased, so we are seeing a little bit of savings in there, as it is a lower cost though than the teacher's retirement. And unfortunately that rate did go up. Health insurance premium also increased. Keep in mind, health insurance, we only know 6 months of the premium cost for next year. The remaining 6 months we have to estimate based on history and what the insurance companies are providing us at this time. Contractual supply adjustments provide for a 4-year spending trend. We continue to look back at what we've done in the past workshop to present to the board what that proposed contract will be looking like. It is about, I want to say it's about an $8 million project that we'll be doing. So they'll be here at that point to give a little bit more details as to what that project will entail.
Okay, just explain that. It's not $8 million. This is...
It's an $8 million, correct. It's at no cost to the district. It's an $8 million project. However, we will receive savings actually at $8 million or above over the course of 15 years of that project. So, and again, we'll go into that in more detail on the March 8th. When we start doing that work, we'll start seeing those savings. Should we not see the savings, the ESCO, Johnson Controls, will have to actually cut the district a check for what the savings were projected to be at. So we will never be out money on that end. Capital bond work, as we mentioned in Facilities Committee report, it is moving forward. We are looking to reduce the repair portion of the budgets once we start doing this work. And we're hopeful that we'll start seeing further savings within those other line items within the repairs. So again, as I mentioned last meeting, we discussed a capital reserve versus a repair reserve. Just yesterday, I received even further updates on the difference between the two as per what would be recommended. When you do a repair reserve, you don't get any building aid on those type of items. So that kind of just sealed the deal for myself for recommendation. Repair reserves are just strictly repairs. It is not a replacement. So for instance, if we had one and the roof was leaking and we needed to replace it, you could not do that with the repair reserve. You could repair the patches that we've had problems with, but that would be the extent of it. So therefore, it is our recommendation to go forward with a capital reserve proposal. It's to pay for the cost of any object or purpose for which a bond could be issued. So instead of borrowing money and the burden being on the taxpayers, it would actually be money that we have in a savings account that would be used to pay for that project. Again, those are able expenses, so it is helpful for the district in order to go ahead and do that. We would put a proposition forward to the voters, and our intent is to do that with the May budget vote. It would be a second proposition. It would specify the purpose, the dollar amount to be deposited into the reserve, how long we would intend to fund that reserve, and what the sources of funds would be. So we could use a specific line item in the budget say $150,000 a year for 15 years to put into that reserve. Or we could, once we have excess funds at the end of the year through savings or revenues, we could then fund the reserve at that point in time. The money never expires. The expiration is the funding portion of it. Once you actually finish funding it, you do have time after that to actually complete the projects that you may have listed. So the recommendation would be, is what we would look at is the building condition survey report and those items that we never picked up with the bond. If you recall, it was about a $60 million proposal in the BCR. We went for a $34 million proposal to the community, so we could pick some specific items out of there in order to start targeting with the capital reserve.
Can I just ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The public is voting on whether to have the reserve, or the public is voting, we have to specify exactly how much
They'll
and for
vote
what?
on creating the reserve, how much the reserve will be, how long the life will be, and what it will be for.
And it's all in one vote?
It's all in one vote.
Okay.
Once we're at the point where we're starting to spend it, another vote will have to go forward to the public in order to do so.
So you have
So
to
there's
not
two
only
votes.
vote to have it, then you have to vote for them to approve that this is what we want to spend it on?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
If I could just add to that, I think throughout our bond presentations, we alluded to the community that we wanted to create a system of cyclical repair and replacement so that we do not have to go out to the community for large-scale capital bond projects. This is the methodology that's appropriately used to do just that. So I think we've already addressed the community that we'd be looking to do that in the near future.
Right, instead of having to replace all the roofs outright.
Got it. And it would be a portion of the overall budget rather than a separate budget.
You could make it a separate, you could make it a transfer to capital line item within your budget and set an amount every budget year, which would be part of the tax levy portion of it. Or you could choose to say, when we have funds left over at the end of the year because we had expenditure savings or additional revenues come in, we'd like to take those funds and put them to the capital reserve. So it would be specific within the resolution as to how we would do that. So the tax levy, as Dr. Bassett was mentioning, is an important piece of the budget. We are now at the point where we have to report it to the controller's office. It is due March 1st. It is based on a formula that the controller has come up with, the division of budget, I should say. There's exceptions to the levy. capital expenditures, which is our debt, and that gets netted against the building aid we receive, and any increase in retirement contributions on the ERS and TRS side, which are greater than 2%. This year, we don't have those two particular ones. We do have the capital expenditures net of building aid. However, the retirement contribution savings per se no longer exists because it is not going up more than 2%. It's important to note the tax levy cap is not 2%. It's CPI for the tax levy formula is 2%, or it's CPI or 2%, whichever is less. So we are capped at 2%. CPI this year came in just slightly over it. We can't go over that. So 2% is a portion of the formula. Those that have seen Newsday, front page, CPI tax levies are at 2%. That is not true. You will start seeing districts coming out with their numbers soon. In March, I'm sure it will be posted in Newsday because it will be public record once we all report to the controller's office. And everybody will be all over the place. You will have negative levies and you will have anywhere from 4%, 5%, 6% levies, depending on everyone's particular scenario. So Elwood's tax levy, just to take you through the formula, and we've gone through this over a couple of years, what this formula is. It's every district has to use it. You start with your 2017-18 tax levy that you're currently working under. You times that by your tax-based growth factor, which is provided to you by the controller's office. It's a non-negotiable. And then you also add in your 2017-18 pilot monies that you're receiving, and you take out the exemptions that you were using in the formula for the prior year. That gives you an adjusted prior tax levy. We then times that by the allowable growth factor, which is the lesser of CPI or 2%. Again, this year it's 2%. In years past, it's been way less. It's been actually less than 1%. So we are benefiting from the fact that it's a 2% CPI number that we're using in the formula. We deduct the pilot monies we're anticipating receiving in 2018-19. We add in any prior year carryover monies. Unfortunately, typically that is zero. In most districts, it's zero, and the controller's office, when you go into their formula, it will tell you if you have any of those funds. There's a lot of nuances that goes into that particular calculation. And that gives you what your total levy limit is. From that, we then add in the exemptions. Because you have to pay ERS and TRS and you have to pay off your debt, you're allowed to add that back into your levy in order to pay for those expenditures. So where we start with a $44.9 million levy limit, we add in $1.6 million, which is our capital exclusion. Total debt of $2.1 million. Our building aid is just about $470,000. The net of that is $1.6. So we are allowed to levy for that in order to pay for the debt that the district owns. That then creates a $4.6 million levy limit, which equates to 4.217% levy limit for the Elwood School District. 4.217% would require a simple majority. It is not a 60% plus 1. It is 50% plus 1. So that's important to note. The 2% is the CPI portion of the formula, and everyone else's levies are going to vary based on all the other pieces of the formula. Allowable growth factors, the tax-based growth factors, some are seeing decreases, which is affecting those districts significantly. Some are adding on new debt, but don't have the building aid, so they're seeing increases, which is what you can see is happening to us. We had building aid fall off. We lost about $900,000. It's scheduled out. We received building aid over the course of 15 years. We've hit that 15-year mark for the most of it, but we still have debt on the books. So by adding in that higher exclusion, it's increasing our tax levy limit to 4.2%.
So just for real plain language, our tax cap is 4.2%?
Yes.
4.12. So the number that you got, the 4.21%, sorry, I can't say, from taking the tax levy that's on top of that 44 million, and then dividing it by the tax levy plus exemptions.
It's taking the tax levy, multiplying it by the growth factor, adding in your pilot, taking out last year's exemptions, timesing it by CPI, taking out this year's pilot, adding in your carryover, adding in your prior year, and then you get to that number. Yes. Again, it's not a simple, it's not 2%. It's a formula, and the 2% is a portion of that formula. So by pulling all of this information together, then we come up with the 4.2%.
No, I know, I say that, but the numbers that go into that actually give the percentage.
Oh, you get that? You take, the 44,719 that we're currently working under with the 46,605, which is on the limit level.
This one, okay. Yeah, just want to go for this one too. Okay.
Make sense?
No, yeah, I'm just trying to see.
Any other questions on the formula before I move forward?
One question. With our debt expiring that you added back in, or to count it towards the formula.
Yep.
I'm not a numbers person. Is that pretty much a one-time thing? Like this is giving us this bonus tax cap limit this year because of that?
You add the debt in every year.
Okay.
So it's the debt that's already on the books, and included in this 2.1 million is the estimated debt that we'll be taking on with the new bond anticipation note, and which is the interest only. So adding in, I want to say that was about $186,000. By adding that into that debt, it just increases it a little bit more. But we already have just under $2 million worth of debt on our books at this point in time that we continue. And it is being paid down. We only have a few years left, as we mentioned throughout the capital bond process, that 2022 is when the debt will fall off the books.
I have a question from the question.
Yep.
And being very simplified because I'm not a numbers person. I'm trying to see if we are in a unique opportunity with the 4% that is this year like lightning striking. Is this a unique thing, or it could happen next year or the next year? Is that making any sense?
It makes sense.
Okay.
We're not unique. You may remember a few districts, it was either last year or the year before, were at 10, 12%. And that's because they took on debt for the first time ever in their district. So that was unique to them, but then they're seeing that it then stabilizes out because you're continuing with that debt and it's becoming a factor in the formula both on the top and the bottom. And that is why it was critical for us to maintain and bring on new debt to the books, because it does play such a significant role within the tax levy formula.
To further answer your question, the reason why it's somewhat difficult to predict, another major factor in the formula is CPI. And just 2 years ago, CPI came in at 0%, and now this year we're at the maximum of 2%. So it's very hard to say what we will be at next year. If you're asking if this is a good opportunity to increase our base, the answer is yes, because you remember your rate is based upon your total budget. So to have a larger base for future planning would be financially very much beneficial to the school district. Carrie will show you on the next slide that the delta between where we're allowable and 2% is a near $1 million. The difficult work of the board that I alluded to as a preface is where do we feel our community is comfortable? This being a particularly tricky year, as the community has already approved the bond and given us the blessing to move forward with that additional expense. Why don't you talk about the next slide and we'll illustrate where we are.
So your allowable levy as it compares to 2%, if you look at, we start at 4.2%, which is a $1.8 million increase. And as we slowly decrease it down to 2%, it's just under $1 million. Every percent is $500,000 for the Elwood School District. So you can see where we would be if we don't go to the full 1.8 million. We're taking out $200,000 less in our expenditures, $300,000 less, $500,000. So you can see all the way down to actually removing $1 million of expenditures out of our budget in order to balance the budget if we go down to 2%. So as Dr. Boxer was alluding to, is we need to figure out where in this scale are we comfortable? Where do we feel the voters will support? You will also start hearing districts within the surrounding area that have been surveyed are coming in over 2%. And some of it because of building aid and the way the formula works, some because of CPI. CPI is over 2%, which is creating a higher tax levy limit for every district. You'll see different numbers all over. Districts will be coming around 2.25, 2.5%. Some will be as high as we are at the 4%, some even higher. So we need to gauge where our community is, what they will support, and what is the board comfortable going forward with. So, within the next couple of weeks, take a look at this, have conversations out there in the community so that we can have feedback in March when we need to start really finalizing these budget numbers.
Yeah, one of the tasks that the administration and the board will be charged with if we elect to propose a tax levy at greater than 2% is educating our community that it is not an attempt at a pierce. So every conversation we will have moving forward about the budget, if the board elects to charge the administration the flexibility of having a budget built at above 2% is that very message. We will have to make it abundantly clear in multiple venues how a budget at above a 2% levy is not a Pierce budget. That's the trick.
So it was, the question was raised a couple meetings ago about where have we been since the tax cap was initiated back in 2012-13, and you can see the fluctuation of what has happened with the tax levy and with the limits that were allowable. So back in 2012-13, when this first came out, our levy limit was above 2%. We levied at the limit. In 2013-14, we were just over 3%, and we were successful levying at the limit. 14-15, we saw a decline under 1.5%. 15-16, just over 2% again. 16-17 was the worst year, where we were just over 0.5%. And last year, where we did try to go above the cap, we're not successful. Our levy limit was I think 2.1% at the time. But it was the board's decision at that time, based on a failed budget, that 1.99% would be the way to go in order for the community to have a comfortable feeling and understanding of what they were approving. So this is just to see the fluctuations that we're seeing, and that's all based on the formulas, CPI, and how it's working for the Elwood School District. So the tax levy for 2018-19, my recommendation to the board is go to the levy limit. You don't ever want to leave money on the table, especially in the environments that we're working in. Especially here in Elwood, we have seen what it does to us. We have removed all fund balance. We've been successful in the past 2 years to replenish that funding based on good things happening. So in order to continue being fiscally responsible and moving forward and fiscally healthy, maximizing that revenue is important. It's set every year. When you levy at a lower limit, you are lowering the base in all your years forward. It compounds the effect going forward. You never get that money back. Where it did have in the formula a carryover amount that you can utilize, just from, we left money on the table per se. This current school year went to 1.99 instead of 2.1. That money we left is not part of your carryover. That was the initial understanding of it when this formula first came out to the districts in 2012-13 and 13-14 being the second year. And some people left, they went to 2% and left money on the table, hoping they would be able to use it in the following years. And the way they derived the formula for the allowable carryover limit, nobody actually was able to touch that money. So it's something to keep in mind as you move forward. Again, the misconception is 2% for all districts based on the news reports. It's not. Everybody has their own calculation, and everybody will be at a different levy limit. So on the other side of revenue is state aid. That's our other major piece of funding that we get. The governor's proposal was a minimal increase for state aid. It actually does show a negative, and that's because of building aid falling off. But we did see a slight increase on our foundation aid. I believe it was about $20,000. And some of our expense aids were going up, and that's just based on the spendings that we're doing. A large portion of the decrease, as I mentioned, was the building aid. So right now, we're budgeting what we know. We know that it is flat aid, basically. We're budgeting the decreased building aid, and we have increasing expenditure lines according to the mandates that are being proposed at this point in time. One of those major mandates is the summer special ed program. We run a program for our students, and currently we receive 80% funding for that program from the state, from the federal government. However, with the changes that they're proposing, they're looking to make it more proportional based on wealth factors, and every district would actually use their own ratio for that. So for what that does to us, we are currently funded at 80% of the expenditures we spend on those programs. We actually would only receive 44% of aid on that program that we're running. So it's important to understand that particular piece of legislation. There are other things out there. They're looking to cap building aid, transportation aid, and BOCES aid at 2% every year. And doing that changes the game on a lot of things. That would be effective for the 19-20 school year, though. So there's a lot of things out there. We're, at this point, planning based on what the proposals are. We're waiting for the final reports to start coming out within the next coming weeks.
If I could just re-emphasize that, Kerry is an excellent steward of taxpayer dollars, and when we put this budget together to present to the board, we use a worst-case scenario proposal. We built the budget based upon there being no increases to aid from the governor's proposal. We built it upon that all of his changes to funding being approved by the electeds, and also the board not giving any flexibility to the administration to build a budget above 2%. So that is where we are. We are hopeful that moving forward in our budget process, the Senate and the Assembly get together to increase the allocation of state aid to schools from the governor's proposal. We hope they do not support proposals from the governor on some of the reductions we would realize. And we are hopeful that the board will charge the administration with building a budget with the levy capped above 2%. But right now, everything we are proposing to you is built on that base. We have had to make some difficult decisions and some difficult reductions to our budget to get here. So we are hopeful that if there is money restored within the governor's proposal, added in the final state aid runs, or flexibility demonstrated from the board, that will help us to bring forward a program that we feel would be more reflective of the needs of the students.
So to piggyback that, we're continuing to work on this. It's an evolving process. We are in the height of the process right now. We have had numerous staffing meetings. Mrs. Hull is continuing those meetings at the building level to make sure we can narrow down exactly what our staffing requirements will be for next school year. Items we're still looking at, BOCES budget overall was just received yesterday, so we have the opportunity to go ahead and reflect all the changes on the BOCES contracts. Our final staffing for the 18-19 school year, we anticipate finishing that up hopefully tomorrow, so that after the break we can pin down those numbers and lock that in basically for the March presentation. And transportation CPI increase. We don't know what that is, and we won't know before the budget's adopted, so we actually have to go based on what we do know now. That number is actually the May CPI number, so we have to continue to follow CPI trend up until the point we adopt it so that we can adjust that contract accordingly. So that contract's renewable every year, and we renew it typically at CPI, and for quite a few years it was actually a zero increase based on the fact that CPI was either negative or zero in the May month. So we're waiting on that information as well at this time. So those are the large cost drivers within the budget, and we'll continue to work on those in the coming weeks and have hopefully some more solid numbers in March. March 8th is when we will meet again. We're going to go over the curriculum program proposals, elementary through secondary, some in-depth technology budget, the special education budget. We will provide class size projections for grades K through 5. We will give enrollment updates, and we will also at that point have further revenue update based on information we're receiving from the government. Further questions?
Do you know when those final tax levy numbers will be coming out so that we can see where we're at compared to other folks?
They're required to be reported to the controller by March 1st, assuming everybody stays in compliance with that. Usually, my colleagues, we all start sharing the information at that point. We are starting to share the information, but nobody has finalized it or submitted just yet. Everyone's kind of afraid to hit that button because we're hopeful something may change in our favor.
Right.
But I would say hopefully by March 8th, I'll have a little bit better feel based on the superintendent's surveys and the business official surveys. We should start seeing numbers come out. But I would say also by mid-March,
that's when we start getting
yes.
Newsday published.
The history of all of it is on Open Book. Open Book New York is all the histories of every district. You can go on there and find every tax levy and the formulas and how it all works out for any district you'd like. So I'm not sure when they will actually post the current year on Open Book, but usually in mid-March is when Newsday gets a hold of all the information and starts putting it out there.
Okay, and I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, maybe you do. When does the vote occur on all these propositions to cut special ed summer programs and all that kind of stuff that's out there now?
It's in the finalized state budget, which is supposed to be adopted by April 1st, which is Easter Sunday, so I'm sure it's April 2nd. If the state comes forward with an on-time budget. Over the last few years, the state has been very diligent and has provided us with an on-time budget. In years prior to just the most recent, it was delayed well past that. The sooner we have the final aid runs, the better sense we will have of the revenue we'll be receiving from the state.
Because it didn't seem in that legislative breakfast that those cuts were going to be forthcoming.
Every elected official said they would not vote to support the summer school remediation program reductions. So
Or the
hopefully,
2% cap on expense-based aids.
right, so hopefully there are some positive changes to the governor's proposal. But I do have to say, considering the amount of debt that New York State has incurred and the budget shortfall in the billions of dollars.
Unbelievable with stock markets.
Right.
Much.
The governor's initial proposal to be a $700 million increase to aid for education is a much better starting point than we anticipated. You might recall from the conversations we had within the legislative breakfast that the proposals of governing bodies like NYSUT and NYSBA, New York State School Boards Association, NISCUS, New York State Council of School Superintendents, all agreed that the additional aid increase that would fully fund programs within the state would be $2.2 billion. It was made pretty clear we will not be approaching $2.2 billion, but it was pretty general consensus that the increase would certainly exceed $700 million.
But it seemed like that aid was more concentrated toward struggling school districts.
One of the challenges for Elwood, and you know this, is we are viewed as a wealthy district. We have a community wealth ratio of 1, which identifies us as wealthy. I think our property tax paying residents may feel otherwise, but we are viewed that way by the state. So even if there is a substantial increase to the state aid run for Elwood, it does not solve that $1 million gap that we're looking for in a fully funded construction program. As Carrie mentioned, our decrease in overall aid is tremendous because of falling off building aid. The increase to our foundation aid was $20,000. So even if they triple our increase, we're at a $60,000 mark, which does not, unfortunately, impact our budget, our overall budgetary process. Spoiler alert, for those who watch our meetings after they've taken place or are watching live, who dissect everything that we've shared, particularly when speaking of finances, we do not anticipate the board to authorize a 4.21% budget. Fiscally speaking and economically driven decision-making of what would be in our best interest, Carrie is correct to recommend it. It would put us in the best possible financial position moving forward, but we also need to be responsible to put forward a number that we know the community will support. I'm hopeful that the board agrees that number is somewhere north of 2%, but we understand that it is likely not north of 4%.
And the class sizes for grades K through 5 will have March 8th, but we won't have any of those class sizes for middle school and high school.
We'll have some estimates. Again, if you would like, a spoiler alert, we are looking to maintain current class size. We're not looking to increase class size. We're not looking to decrease it significantly. We're looking to maintain it evenly across the board K-12.
I just wanted to go back to the administrative component of the budget.
Yep.
And just for some clarification, when you talk about the employee retirement decreasing, it's the budget and their health benefits, or is it their health and their, 401k?
It's all benefits that go along with the CBA. So as individuals may be retiring within the support staff or administration staff or wherever, or teaching staff, what we do is we take a net effect. We retire out that teacher, which is their salary along with all their fringe benefits that they receive, the payroll taxes, the retirement, the health benefits, life insurance, whatever else they may receive as per their collective bargaining agreement, and we replace them with the lower salary replacement along with all the benefits that would pertain to that particular individual coming in as well. So we take that full effect of information in. The other on all components, we have legacy costs. As people do retire out, there are costs to those retirees that we do maintain on our books. So that gets included in actually every component. We do maintain as to which position they held in the district when they retired. So if it was a teacher retiring, they're part of the program. If it was a principal that retired, they're part of that administrative component budget as well. So there's legacy costs that go along with everything. That is also included within there.
Okay. So there's really no direct relationship as to why one is decreasing and one is increasing. Why the employees would be just decreasing, it's not because, the number of employees or the number of teachers that would be retiring.
We would see a correlation, because typically, I mean, obviously, we have 200 teachers as opposed to 30 clerical staff. So if we see 5 or 6 teachers retiring, and they're at a much higher salary than what our clerical staff would be at in the administrative side, if we see 1 or 2 clerical go, but 5 teachers go, you're gonna see a large decrease in the program component. But as far as on the administrative side, we're not seeing much of a savings as for retirements particularly. But we do make sure we try to take effect of all of them. Retirements are typically due to the district by March 1st. So we do still have a few more weeks for anybody out there that is looking to move on from Elwood and go sit on a beach somewhere. But, so we don't know, me too. We don't know where that number's gonna land just yet. So that's another critical piece to the budget that we're looking at. Anything else?
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, next we move on to our discussion items, and tonight we are discussing the policy 2351, public participation at board meetings.
May I?
Sir?
It's tab M for the board. As the board is aware, the administration, along with the help of New York State School Boards Association, did a very thorough review of our entire policy manual. And over the next several meetings, probably for multiple years, different policies will be brought forward for amendment, deletion, addition, and other actions. There are some policies on tonight that are up for revision. We have been doing work at the administrative level to review all the policies to make informed recommendations for the board, and I'll be meeting with those identified to do some of the subcommittee work, Mrs. Marcus and Mrs. Weiss, on the Thursday after the break. We have a lot of work to do that day. I might even have to buy lunch. That said, during the review of policies, we read a lot of our policies to make sure they were still in line with our practice, and we identified one that is not. So policy 2351 speaks to public participation at board meetings, and much of it is reflective of our current practice, but there is one glaring difference between our practice and the policy. The policy indicates, I will read, persons wishing to address the board shall advise the board president prior to the scheduled start time of the meeting. The request shall be made in writing on a form provided by the district and shall include the name of the speaker, the address, telephone number, name of organization represented, if any, and a brief description of the topic to be addressed. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single spokesperson. And it goes on to illustrate many of the practices that we do employ. But clearly we have not created a form nor asked residents to fill out and submit such form prior to the meeting for at least the last 12 years. We were able to go back to 2006 to confirm that that has not been occurring. We did create a form, and the board has a model in front of them of what that form might look like. I can tell you from personal experience, this form is used in other districts that I have served. Do we have the template form?
If you look under discussion items, that file attachment.
We do not have it attached. It's very easily identified. It's today's date, name of speaker, address of speaker, telephone number for future contact, name of organization, if any, and a brief description of the topic to be addressed. And then the person has to sign that they're aware of the policy that Mrs. Freed read aloud prior to public participation, prohibiting items and things like that. This is a document that I used in my prior school district, and I have seen in place in the other school districts in which I've been employed. It is unusual that there is no such requirement in Elwood. However, one of the primary responsibilities of the Board of Education is to set and enforce policy. That is the primary role of the Board of Education. So the reason why I brought it forward for discussion is we are violating our own policy currently. So one of two things should occur. We should take action to comply with the policy by introducing a document and putting it into practice at our public meetings, or we should amend the policy to redact that portion and do away with any thoughts of filling out forms and such. So I'm looking for the board to discuss questions and concerns, pros and cons, And then whatever action you wish to take, we will employ at future meetings. Either we will add the form and be in compliance with policy, or we will bring forward the policy for a first reading with revisions, removing that citation.
Can you share with us, since I can attest that it's been at least 2000 that we've never had this. Been around at board meetings that long, but
Lucky.
but why, it seems like what we're doing has been pretty effective. What do you see as the advantage to doing something like this? And that's number one. And number two, what if something spurs your thought in the middle of a meeting and you haven't handed this form in and now you can't ask a question?
I will answer your second question first because it's easier. The forms would be kept in the back of the room throughout the meeting, and if a discussion item spurs a thought, the form would be filled out during the meeting, handed to the district clerk during the meeting, and then reviewed during the second invitation. So that's the easier answer.
Okay.
The benefit to the form being filled out prior to the meeting, and mind you, I'm not advocating for it. The benefits that I have witnessed are that it gives the board some time, very brief, to collect thoughts on what might be an appropriate response, if any, to the inquiry. It also gives the board a sense if multiple speakers are going to wish to speak to the same topic, and then by policy, the board president would ask that list of speakers if they want to elect a spokesperson to speak to the topic, much like you did in practice at a prior meeting. It also helps us to document who is asking questions, so if a follow-up is necessary, we have contact information and names, so we can report back if the question was not answered during the public meeting. And also it makes it very clear if the person is representing their own interests or representing an organization. It's really good.
I have comments about it. Just a few things. I would be in favor, I think, of redacting that portion, because I think it's worked fine to have impromptu conversation dialogue with community members. But one thing, when we say, somebody could be here in the meeting, have an impromptu question arise, and go fill out a form, that's not in the policy, so we would actually have to add that into the policy if we want that procedure to be part of it. But also adding that into the policy would allow somebody who wanted to catch the board by surprise to come up with an impromptu question and not give it ahead of time to the board. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like a part of filling out the form and giving us a chance to think about it ahead of time could be circumvented by the impromptu filling out of the form, which I think is necessary anyway.
And one of the positive aspects that I neglected to evaluate is based on what you just said. Sometimes when people refer to the question they want to ask, the board is able to assess whether or not it's an appropriate question that conforms to board policy. For instance, if the person submits a form that says they want to complain about teacher X, the board can point out that is not an appropriate comment, and I'm sorry, we won't be able to address that topic. As a matter of fact, in practice, that's probably the largest benefit I've seen in the past.
But when Julia speaks, and when she's stating the resident remarks, she basically states that it's not personal, it's prohibited personal comments, correct?
That's right. I think in the past, I don't ever remember having a big problem with that. We have had things that have come up that were not appropriate, and then we just, the board president said, that's not appropriate for this venue, please refer to, whatever administrator would be responsible for that. So I haven't seen a huge problem with that in the past in Elwood.
And I don't believe we've had any such instances since I arrived.
Right.
I also agree with Ms. Marcus. I wouldn't want to see it being redacted. I like that the presidents can come up to the microphone. There isn't that layer of needing to submit what you want. If you want to ask a question, you have the right to come in. That's why we sit this day is to be advocates for the community. And if you're there, you have a question, by all means, that's what we're here to do, is answer. If we don't have the correct answer, or answer that time, it's okay for us to get back to you. I think the community, and I've been going to board meetings for 10 years now, I think they respect that, and it has come up where we don't have an answer, we do get back to the community, and I'd rather do it that way than have that extra step in there, and I don't know, I feel like it would frustrate people and anger people to, why do you need to know what I want to ask before I get here? I'm coming to a public meeting, I should be able to speak, that's why the residence remarks are afforded. I mean, I could be wrong, residence remarks don't have to be part of an agenda, correct?
You are correct. There is no regulation requiring resident.
So I think we open that up to the community. I think we do so to have that respectful dialogue. I mean, it's been past practice that that's how it happens, so I'm okay with redacting it.
And it's recorded, so we would know who is submitting questions, because now we record all the meetings.
And basically, I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So, when I had read this, again, as with Julia, I've been coming to board meetings for a long time, and I've never seen a form, and I think you answered all the questions, but the form that you had is a form that you comprised, but to your knowledge, we didn't have a form that was attached
Correct.
to the policy. And with that, we had no documentation of we had no file of forms. So, which just leads to believe that it wasn't something that was important enough to keep filing for a certain number of years. You answered, I think Julie asked what the advantages of submitting the form were. Why it needed to be submitted at the prior start of the meeting. And so I don't really think that we've ever had an issue where we were limited to, we've had more people speaking than we had a lot of time. I don't really recall when we.
So
I
listen,
can see
if we were
time
getting
management.
these forms a couple of days before, and we could really do our homework
Yeah.
and come to the table fully prepared, it might be different. But that's, mostly people like to come to the meetings, listen, and then ask questions.
Yeah.
So I don't think a couple of minutes of looking at something on a piece of paper is going to make that big a difference.
Can I help you?
Especially if they can do
So
it
I think we all have to
Can I-
have.
The only thing,
Can I help for a moment?
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure the board understands procedurally that there's no one on the administration that is advocating for the
No.
use of the form.
No, you made that clear.
No, we understand.
I think.
We just want to follow the policy.
We were 100% convinced that you were going to say, let's revise the policy to eliminate that language, but I have no authority to change board policy without approval of the board.
There we go.
Okay, the only other thing I just want to touch upon, and what has been since I've been coming to meetings, board practice, is the person getting up to a microphone to state their name, say any affiliations. I think it's good to know that who's speaking at the podium and addressing the board is a resident in the district.
Yes.
So I think that's something that maybe isn't reflected in the policy that I would like to see added into it.
Yes. I mean, maybe we could keep a book in the back of the room where a person who asks a question would then have to log in their name.
Well, I think like
and
Ms. Marcus
address.
said, we're on.
We're on record, but not everybody, advertises their, information.
I think that's what we need to make sure happens. I think the person speaking should address them, I think it's the board president.
Please state your full name, and state that you are a resident.
Yeah, I've been to some board meetings where they have to say, I reside at, I don't think we have to go to that extreme, but I think it should be where they say.
They affirm their residence.
Exactly, where the organization they're affiliated with or representing that evening. I think that would make it clear to us who's at the podium and what the question may be.
Right.
And that we follow through with that, because I think that has gotten lazy with some usual suspects, that we all know, and it's,
Correct.
we need to be,
Right, sure.
really give
Sure.
your name,
I
really
hear what you're
follow this however we have it.
Just to be procedurally accurate, there's nothing in your policy that requires a speaker to be a resident.
Right, well,
Yeah,
I think it's-
That's what we got to amend to.
but I think
It's residents' remarks.
That's the way we noted on the agenda, there's
that's
nothing
not
in the
the
policy.
policy. I'm saying that,
So,
what I'm saying is that should be reflected in the policy, and it
Okay.
should be.
Now let me ask you a follow-up question to that. If it's residents' remarks and the policy calls for resident speaks only, would the board invite the opportunity for a member of the faculty or staff to address the board who is not a resident?
Yes.
Then you have to put it in the policy.
Correct.
Okay, so
They're
well,
resident,
we realize we have to amend
they're
the
part of the
policy.
Elwood family, I guess. They're not-
Yes, the Elwood community one. I think the biggest thing is that we want to encourage communication, we want to encourage feedback, and we want to have a policy that reflects that.
Great.
yes, there we go.
So we're going
It's
to add, we're going to redact the form.
So you maybe give it back in our dinner along with lunch.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
Maybe we'll do
Eggplant
farm. We're going to redact the form, we're going to add reference to resident, and we will I think create language that said the board can afford the opportunity at their discretion for those who are not residents to speak. I wouldn't limit it specifically to faculty and staff. If you have a visiting dignitary who wants to speak to you on an issue, you want to give the opportunity in policy and put it at the authority of the board to say you may or you may not speak.
You know, I would say the official dignitary public, if we get there, it'd be interesting.
If the Pope shows up, you
Yeah.
want to make sure he's out loud.
We want him to speak. And I think we also talked about the,
I don't know, I said Pope.
I'm wondering that myself.
The first, I think that's the go-to dignitary, we all think of, so.
Jewish guy said Pope.
I think we want to also distinguish in the policy the difference between first resident remarks and second resident remarks, so that if we can just note that we will make some clarification as if there will be any sort of distinction, or if it will just be open discussion.
Let's do that. Common practice is that in the first invitation, it has to be relevant to an item on the agenda, whereas second invitation is typically open-ended in nature because questions could come up.
It's actually,
We thought, yeah.
that's why it's got to be a little clearer.
So, common practice. So does the board can keep the policy silent on that issue, or the board can define what first and second invitation?
I prefer to keep it silent because sometimes people want to talk about an agenda item before we talk about it so that the discussion might be influenced by that. And some people want to discuss it after our discussion. So again, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
And that's my news show, where you can write it on the agenda however you want it, but it doesn't have to be in the policy.
Here's the trick. I will use a concrete example of where I see the advantage of addressing agenda items during first invitation. If an agenda item tonight called for the elimination of the varsity football team, and the public saw that item on the agenda and wanted to impress their feelings to the board before the board took action on the item, they would need to do that during the first invitation before you took action on the item. If the board takes action to eliminate the varsity football team, which is a hypothetical situation being presented, the vote will have already taken place before the public has the opportunity to speak to it, which is why it's typical that the first invitation is for agenda items.
But currently, they can ask that question in the first resident remarks.
You're telling me. I'm learning with you, but what's being articulated to me is that it has tended to be the opposite.
No, I think, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I think what the perception is being, sitting on the other side, is that the first resident remark can be anything. It can be whatever, if I don't like, the color of the lawn, for some reason, I can come up and say it. It's not limited to the agenda. However, the second resident remark, so the first can also include something on the agenda. The second resident remark can only be limited to those items that were discussed at the meeting. And I think if I'm to make an assumption as to why that was, or why that is because we could be here, people could just keep coming up and talking about different items it's more of a time constraint.
It's not dictated on the agenda either way. So it's our discretion to keep it the way it is, that it can be before or after, or to change the policy. To me, again, it hasn't been a broken practice.
So if the policy remains silent on that issue and it's not listed on the agenda in any capacity, then each invitation is open-ended in nature, and that's perfectly fine. This board has been very transparent with the community, has been very respectful of people who want to come forward and speak, and keeping it open-ended on both sides is absolutely fine. So we can keep the policy silent on that issue.
Any resident remarks?
That's funny. We spoke more about the resident remarks policy than we have heard from the residents over the last, I don't know how many months.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the elephant in the room. Is it plausible? Is it plausible to encourage communication? And because we have an audience that's live, is there any way to incorporate that audience that's at home if they
I would not
Submit questions.
recommend it. You don't know who's asking the question, what their affiliation is, who they're associated with. Online anonymity scares me.
Okay, I mean, as an example, let's say Mrs. Coster can't come in. No, I'm not Skyping in, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is utilizing the form to say, okay, she has a question, but she can't come because she has a flu. So, but she has a very important question she wants to ask. Normally what happens is she may ask, Mrs. Freed to come in and to read her question for her. Would it be possible for her to submit her question to the clerk, get logged, and then be read, or is that just not
Well,
appropriate?
typically questions that come in from the public get answered in real time outside of work.
They wanted it to be recorded.
Today specifically, I answered many questions.
I think that, given that our telephone numbers are in the calendar, they can always either email Dr. Bossert with their question, and then, or call us and ask their question.
And the board has the email address as well.
I don't know if it's necessarily always a matter of getting the question answered as opposed to stating the case and having it recorded publicly. And I think that sometimes
And I
is.
think, just
Do
trying
you believe in?
just to chime in, I think common practice in the years have been, if you can't make it to the board meetings, you send a friend. I think Elwood's been great about that if you can't make it, your buddy's coming to read either scripted comments or they're coming to represent you. I don't know, is there other districts that you're aware of, Dr. Bosworth, that has, where you could send in something that you want spoken? I think if you can't represent yourself, it's not gonna be.
I can't profess that it doesn't exist, but I'm not aware of it.
So it's not common practice as you refer to. I don't think this one.
A good example is, we've gotten a few letters on things that we voted on recently, people that couldn't make it to the meeting but wrote us, the board, a letter on their position. We've had that recently.
So we see it, but it's not.
It's not
spoken
public
about.
unless you sent somebody to read it publicly.
Okay. Food for thought.
Thank you. No, you may not speak. We just set a policy that's in.
The only thought that I had is that the clarification that if people do want to make a comment that impacts a decision, that somehow it'd be recommended they speak at the first. That somehow people should be aware that, because people come and don't even realize that there are two of them, and they may miss it or they come late. So that the idea that if you want to influence the board or you have something that's impacting a discussion item, it would be best to present those remarks at the first.
I think what we'll do is we'll amend the wording so that it kind of incorporates all of that and make it as clear as possible about the communication.
Not in the policy, in what you
In the
read.
wording, I'm sorry.
Present.
But we'll have to reiterate that, we can put that in the policy too. Okay.
So that's our draft number 1 on that.
We have our marching orders. Mary Lou took copious notes, and the board will need to accept the first reading at the March meeting of the revised policy.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we are up to consent agenda. So this is the first time we're going to do this. This includes the financial matters, action items, and the second reading of the policy there on vaping and cigarettes. So can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Mrs. Marcus, seconded by Mr. Tomio. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? 4-0.
May I?
You may.
The board just accepted unanimously the retirements of guidance counselor middle school Lauren Buckholz and music teacher middle school Laura Fisher. And we look forward to celebrating along with them at our June meeting as they complete long and successful careers in our school.
Excellent, thank you. So we are up to the second residents' remarks.
What do you got?
You got anything, Kath? No. So, I'm not gonna read this whole thing, no remarks? Okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
We got an emoji right here.
Right here, Mr. Tomio, seconded by Mrs. Marcus, all in favor? 4-0. Thank you for attending. And thank you for watching at home.
Thank you, board.